The Gaslight District is one of Glitch Productions' newest shows, and just like The Amazing Digital Circus, which I covered in another video, it has no shortage of influences. Although, unlike The Amazing Digital Circus, I couldn't find one explicit influence on its plot. What sort of seems to be the case with Gaslight District here is they took inspiration from a bunch of things and put them together, and I'm going to go over the main ones, or at least the main ones that I saw. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So a couple of references that I noticed, actually my first watch through the show, are references to Dante's Inferno and Paradise Lost. Dante's Inferno and Paradise Lost are a couple of classic literature works. I have read Dante's Inferno, but I have not read Paradise Lost. To get the information I needed for this video, I actually needed to look some stuff up about Paradise Lost. So the references to Dante's Inferno come in particular when Ken is explaining the punishment for getting in trouble with heaven. He mentions being trapped in a frozen place, and it cuts to a bunch of people like screaming and crying, and they're frozen with only their face and hands showing. That is a direct reference to the sixth ring of hell in Dante's Inferno, known as treachery. Also, Dante's Inferno is part of a much larger work called Divine Comedy. Infernus is the first part of Dante's Divine Comedy. The references to Paradise Lost would be, in particular, thematically, Paradise Lost kind of deals with the consequences of our actions and sin and immorality. You kind of see that in Gaslight District. They all worship this being and are like abandoned by God, seemingly because of it. And also, the Citadel of Virtues is another thing that's in Paradise Lost. Angels that represent various things like diligence, chastity, stuff like that. Paradise Lost is also a geographic location in the work Paradise Lost. It is the halfway point between heaven and hell. Another reference that inspiration rather, that I kind of had an idea about, if any of you have watched my older videos, I've commented that the Gaslight District feels like some elements of it feels like it was ripped right out of a Soulsborne game. I in particular mentioned Dark Souls, and come to find out, it does indeed take inspiration from a Soulsborne game, just not the one I thought. It's not Dark Souls, but Bloodborne. And I was like, what? That doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, so I looked up, like, how did Bloodborne inspire Gaslight District? And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So, like, in Gaslight District, you kind of have, and in Bloodborne, you kind of have humanity just collapsing and just trapped in this cycle of violence, and they're being mutilated and mutated and just degrading and looking less and less human every day. Also, the black hand, I'm suspecting, is a reference to one of the eldritch entities brought up in Bloodborne. And another thing that I noticed in doing research for this video, that looking back, it's like, well, duh, is that The aesthetic and like the visual style takes inspiration from Tim Burton movies like The Nightmare Before Christmas or Corpse Bride. I've seen parts of, and I'm going to watch all of at some point because like I really enjoyed Coraline, which is something that I looked at for the closest comparison I would have to Tim Burton movies, and I'm like, yeah, I really see the inspiration here. The kind of like dark fantasy and like gothic aesthetic for Gaslight District, I also see in the DNA of Tim Burton movies. And just like looking back, it's like, I don't know why I didn't notice this sooner. Along with the Tim Burton movies for the aesthetic, the Soulsborne games also have a pretty heavy influence on the aesthetic. Like I mentioned earlier, the gothic, dark fantasy setting and aesthetic that it evidently has can be seen in the DNA of the From Software games and the Tim Burton movies. Something that I kind of guessed at was the influence of anime. One scene in particular, like how Mel accidentally reveals to Jack that she has black blood. My experienced anime watchers, you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. And also an anime movie in particular called Dead Leaves. I watched this just today, actually, so that I could make this video and talk about it with you guys. It's also been on my list to watch for a while, but anyways, I digress. And I can see how Dead Leaves would have had an influence on Gaslight District. They're both kind of crazy and hyper violent. The only thing is Dead Leaves, I noticed, has a distinctly more adult and raunchy sense of humor than Gaslight District, which, who knows, Gaslight District might show itself to have more of, but I honestly don't think so because Glitch is on YouTube. They have to be a lot more careful with that kind of thing. So I really don't know if that's something that they'll really include in the show or not. But another thing also about Gaslight District and about Dead Leaves, more so about Dead Leaves, is how frenetic and weird and just bizarre like Dead Leaves is. It is like the most crazy, off the wall piece of media I've ever seen, and that's saying something. I've seen some really crazy stuff, y'all. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. What content would you like to see me do next? I've got a couple of pretty big things planned for next week that I'm excited to share with you guys, but after that, I don't have anything planned right now. What would you like to see me do? Let me know down in the comments. I also have a playlist for my other Glitch Productions related content down in the description, down in the comment section. Thank you for watching.